Welcome back to the series of sessions on Intro to the Kabbalah. The amazing, comprehensive sessions of open videos where you can learn a lot more about, you can gain more knowledge about what Kabbalistic terms and ideas are. Specifically today, and in the next few sessions, we will be talking about the concept of Sefirot, as this is an introduction to the Sefirot course. Welcome to explore this amazing concept. Let's talk today about what Sefirot are, the concept about Sefirot, and the understanding, various ways to understand this term. One of the great ways, one of the great allegories about the Sefirot that I heard was the idea that Sefirot are a palette of colors for painting the worlds. It's interesting to note that there are 10 Sefirot, and 10 colors have been formed as a way to paint the world, as a way to give the world a different way, a different understanding, a different way to connect to the worlds. Colors in our life in general represent emotions. And this set of 10 Sefirot is a palette based on which God paints the worlds. That is kind of further creation of the universe. Each of the Sefirot is a limited part of the divinity. Okay, I'm going to talk to you later. I'm actually going to draw the Sefirot with you. But it's interesting to know that each Sefirah represents one of the colors. Okay, so the ray of light represents the white. Remember, it's a reflection from the light of divine infinity, the reflection of Or Ein Sof. And that represents the white, pearlescent white light. Now we know white means that all the colors are included within the color of white. So when the white light goes further, integrates inside of the circle, like we drew. I'm going to show you that that schematic representation again later on. But for now, it's interesting to note that each light is like kind of a separation, a disintegration from the white color, and an introduction to the world, as each color will add its own connection for the world to connect to what the universe represents to us. Understanding this palette of colors is our ability to see each of the colors separately and understand the relationship between them is very important for our perception of the world. So Sefirot as color filters. It's interesting to note that in order to separate a color, to extract a separate color from the white light, you will need a filter of that light. That is, if white light passes, for example, through a green filter, then the green light comes next. This happens not because the filter colors the light, but because the filter selects from the white light those waves that correspond to the green. So the light of infinity, the Or Ein Sof, the light of divine infinity, is white light. Within it are all manifestations of the divinity. Each of the Sefirot is a filter of a certain wavelength, which passes through only one color, a certain aspect of the divine government of the world. Therefore, for example, when the Almighty, that's how we refer to the divine infinity, it's one of the representation, one of the attributes of God. So when Almighty shows, for example, mercy, which is, in this case, each Sefirah actually represents further on an attribute that we can understand psychologically. So let's take, for example, mercy. This process is controlled through the Sefirah of mercy, which is Chesed. Chesed is also known as kindness, okay? So kindness can be represented, can be perceived in different ways. One of them would be kindness. One of them would be mercy, right? And when mercy is shown to the world, it also activates judgment, okay? It's interesting to understand that's how Sefirot works. Kindness and structure judgment kind of go together. It's like a coin with two worlds, right? Remember, this world is a lot about duality, right? And that there's a lot of philosophical discussion. I'm going to try to make it more simplified for you to just understand the concept, right? So each Sefirah kind of brings, each Sefirah brings various attributes to the universe, okay? So in the way to understand it, one of the way to understand it is if you take the white color and then further disintegrate it into various spectrums, which represent different colors, okay? Another way to explain what Sefirot are vessels of divine light, okay? We're actually going to explore this term. This is a very important Kabbalistic term, the vessels. The term vessels is a very Kabbalistic term. We're going to actually explore this further on in the next video. I'm going to actually talk, there is a whole video, we're going to talk about what the word vessels represent, how it relates to what we do in life, how it relates to our soul mission, to our life mission. Again, more understanding. The way I present Sefirot here is a Kabbalistic understanding, but also through psychological connection, how we can connect to it psychologically, how we can connect to it metaphorically, how we can use it practically within our life. Okay, so another allegory calls the Sefirot the vessels of divine light, because that's what Sefirots are. There, I'm going to show it to you soon. I'm going to transfer my camera and we're going to draw, right? It's going to be circles. Each Sefirah is actually represented as a circle, and each circle is represented by the term vessel. The circle is a vessel. The vessel is the circle is a vessel that contains the divine light. That's why Sefirot are also known as vessels of divine light. The vessel is what holds the content is. Okay, the Sefirot actually hold the reflection of the light of the divine infinity. Okay, and taking this vessel and putting it somewhere. It's the same idea as taking water. I like to use that a lot with water. Water, you cannot contain water. It will just pour everywhere, right? But if you take a vessel and pour water, it will give it a form. And then you can direct it wherever you want. You can pick it up, you can bring it to your table, you can put it in a bottle, you can carry it with you, you can cover it, and then it wouldn't spill, right? Lots of practical use. And the same idea here. The light of divine infinity is actually the light without a vessel, and that's why it's infinity. It goes everywhere. For us in human terms, we can't understand it. Practically, there is no use unless we bottle it, right? Just like we bottle water in order to carry it around, just like we put water in a cup in order to drink, just like we direct the water to come from the spout, right, in order to use it in a household, and so on and so forth. It's the same thing is the idea of divine light. Okay, since it's infinite, and the vessel is always a boundary. That's hence a word Kabbalistic term. One of the ways, by the way, one of the Kabbalistic terms to explain what the vessel is the human body. Just like we, body, the soul, we are the vessel for the divine infinity, for the light of divine infinity, the reflection of divine infinity. Light, remember, represents the reflection of divine infinity. And we, as humans, are vessels that carry the soul. The soul is a representation of the light of divine infinity. That's another way to do it, to explain what vessels are. Interesting to understand, right? What doesn't have a vessel cannot be grasped by a thought. It cannot be easily described, right? But if once you put something in a vessel, like I said before, it has a practical connotation, it has a practical ability, right? The vessels themselves also consist of light. That's another way to understand it, right? Again, like I said, vessels is a very Kabbalistic term. They can be understood very metaphorically. They can be understood practically, like I mentioned, the example of our human body, right? But vessels can be light themselves, probably more molecules. It's the way you want to understand it, okay? When Sefirot, man, it's interesting to understand, we cannot perceive the infinite divinity directly. It's like looking at the sun. And remember, sun is just a fraction of the reflection of the light of divine infinity. So if we cannot look at the sun, right, imagine how huge of a energy is the divine infinity, or even the light of divine infinity. So it's important to understand the way for us to even perceive the divine infinity somehow is that the divine infinity light must be made up somehow. It must come to us in the form of a vessel, because that's the only way we can comprehend it as humans on all levels, as a thought, as an emotion. I mentioned the color. Colors are actually emotional component of the world. This is how we connect to the world on an emotional level. Colors are a metaphor for emotions. Okay. And of course, our body on a physical sense, the idea to comprehend what vessels are. So that's something to understand. One more idea before we go to figure out the actual 3 stages of formation of the Sefirot. Sefirot can be counted and described. Okay, the word Sefirah actually comes from the roots. There are different ways to understand this word, right? One of the word is far, means the border, right? So Sefirot, again, like I said, represents the border, which is how we can also understand the word vessel. Word also, Sefirah is associated with the word mispar, which is number, to count something. Sipur is also the one of the roots of the word Sefirah. Sipur means story. Okay, each Sefirah represents story. That's what we're going to do in each session. We're going to have a storytelling about what the Sefirah represents, what it means to us. Why do we need to connect to it? What attributes will it bring to our life on a practical level? And of course, Sefirah has a root word Sefer, which means book. Okay, also the connection to storytelling. A boundary, right? We're talking about the vessel as a boundary, actually highlight that there is something limited rather than infinity. When we talk about infinity, it's hard for our mind to grasp. So that's why we need to put anything in infinite terms in order for us to connect to it as humans. Okay. The Sefirot is a limited part of divine infinity, of divinity, basically. Sefirot is a kind of antithesis of Or Ein Sof, but it's also a part of it. So that's also another way to understand Kabbalah. Kabbalah is always something that can be remote, something that can be separated. Like Sefirot are not the same as infinity. They're kind of the opposite because they are vessels, they're boundaries, and Or Ein Sof is infinite divine light. But then Sefirot also a part of that infinite divine light. That's very much what the Kabbalistic terms are. They constantly, it's like a duality, but they always connect to each other. That's an interesting understanding. What separates Kabbalistic terms from us human practical terms, right? If it's black, it cannot be white. If it's white, it cannot be black. Like this kind of dual representation of what the physical world is. It's interesting to note. So whatever has boundaries, whenever we put something in a vessel, whenever we bound it, it's not unlimited anymore. We can create what? Structure. And that's a very important term. We're going to talk about it in the next session. I'm going to show you how structures are an important part of what Sefirot are, how there was a stage when Sefirot didn't have a structure and what happened to it as a result. And now we have a structure of Sefirot. And we're going to pay attention to that structure. We're going to note how that structure is built. And that's what will make a huge difference to it. Because once it has a structure, once something has a structure, that something can be what? In human terms, remember? Practicality, physical attribute, counted. We have a count for Sefirot. It's always very important to remember. You may be confused because when I'm going to show you the structure of Sefirot, you're going to be like, but Lana, there are 11 in the structure. But really, it's important to remember there are always 10 Sefirot. Whenever we count, there are always 10 Sefirot. Okay? So remember, the word Sefirah means number, story, storytelling, book, right? It refers to the borders, to the vessels, to the infinity, building something, structuring something. Okay? When we talk about Or Ein Sof, there is no structure. It's just in divine infinity. We cannot count it. Can you count infinity? Not really. It's going to be very hard, right? But when it comes to Sefirot, that's why it's very important to note. We count the Sefirot and it's always number 10. 10 does have a Kabbalistic note, 10 Sefirot, right? We're going to go through each Sefirah later on and explain why the structure of Sefirot will always refer to this 10. And that's going to be something we call the language of Sefirot, okay? Maybe later on I'll make a glossary of Sefirot of our Kabbalistic terms in order for us to better understand. Now, and I'm going to finish with this. It's important for us to start understanding the structure of Sefirot because they're directly related to what we discussed in the previous session, which is the 4 worlds and the 5 levels of the soul. Sefirot are closely connected, just like I showed you last session, how the 5 levels of the soul are directly connected to the 4 worlds. The same thing here. The 10 vessels, the 10 structures, the 10 circles of Sefirot are directly related to each of the 4 worlds, to each of the 5 levels of the soul. Okay, I also like to call it 5 layers of the soul. Okay, I get to see you. I'm inviting you to watch the next video where I will start talking more in details about the way we're going to see how the Sefirot came to form as a structure. Thank you for joining me. And of course, remember, welcome to register on my website for the Sefirot course to get more information, to get more knowledge about each Sefirot. My website is NeuroGraphicaUSA.com. You can also try Lana Shalom, my name, lanashalom.com. See you in next video.